Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another Rec Room tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you guys how you can make something that I like to call a Frisbee Flyer. Now a Frisbee Flyer is something that I'm going to put it up on screen here. A Frisbee Flyer is essentially a Frisbee that whenever you throw it you mimic its movements. So you're the Frisbee in that case, which I find really cool and I hope you guys do too. So we're going to be learning how to make one of these today and we're not going to be wasting any time, so let's just get started to placing the chips. So these are all of the chips that you're going to need to create this Frisbee Flyer. Now I know I did say I was going to place down the circuits in front of you guys, but that takes a lot of time, plus I don't think you guys want to see me place chips for a couple of minutes, so I have them all placed out right here in front of me. You can take your time, copy all of the chips that you find here and place them down, and then we can get started with the wiring. But before we start wiring anything, we gotta change some things. We have an event receiver. We need to change this to a 30 Hertz. Okay? It needs to be a 30 Hertz. And this AND chip down here, we need to add one input on it. One. And you also need to add a tag. You also need to create an object. In this case, you would spawn in a Frisbee. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And this disk, we're gonna give it a tag. We'll take the tag. Yeah, we'll just have disk as the tag. And then you change this tag input on the Rec Room object at first with tag to what the tag was on the disk, which was disk. Now is all of the moderations fixed for the Frisbee circuit. Now let's get to wiring. Alright, so now comes the part where we wire all of the circuits together and make sure that it actually works. So, to begin with, we're going to be wiring this Rec Room object get first with tag output to the Rec Room object get last equipping player, the get velocity, and the Rec Room object get is local player authority. Then, this get velocity output goes to the input on the vector get magnitude. The vector get magnitude output goes to the A port on the greater or equal. The B port you can change to, I'd say 4 is a solid number, yeah. But you can change this whenever you feel like it, because you'll see what this one does. Next one we're gonna wire is this Rec Room object get last equipping player. We're gonna wire the currently equipped output to the not input. And then the player output will go to one of these get position. It will go to the if player is local and to the target on the velocity set. All of these three booleans, the not output, the greater or equal output, and the get local player authority output, all goes to these and all go to this AND chip. The output of that AND chip will go over to the condition on the if. We're also gonna wire this Rec Room object get first with tag to the second get position down here. The output of the 30 Hertz will go to the if chip. The then port on the 30 Hertz will go to if player is local, and then the output is local will go to this velocity set. Then we want to wire the disk position. We want to take the one where we wire the disk position to the top port on the subtract. It's very important that you wire this to the top and not to the bottom, because if you do, then it ends up breaking, which is not what we want. And then the bottom on the bottom of the subtract goes the player position. The output of this subtract goes to the velocity set. And that should be all of the wiring that we need for this Frisbee disk to function. Alright, so now that we have wired up our circuits, now we give it a try. We're gonna grab this Frisbee and we're gonna throw it. And look at that, we are flying with the Frisbee. I can throw it up higher. I can catch it mid-air, I can throw it again, but it's quite hard on screen mode. But you now see what I mean by a Frisbee Flyer. You essentially just fly all over the place where you're throwing. Now, this can be configured in some ways. You can change the speed of essentially how fast you travel. You can do that by changing this speed on the velocity set. The higher you have it, the faster you travel, of course. Now that we know that this circuit works, we're now gonna get to explaining how this actually works. To begin with, we have a Rec Room object get first with tag. This chip will allow us to actually get the disk itself, this one that we have right here, by giving the input a tag that is equal to an object, then we can output that object. The object's output will go to a Rec Room object get last equipping player, a get velocity, Rec Room object get its local player 40, and a get position. The Rec Room object get last equipping player, why we have this one is because we want to check if a player is currently holding the Frisbee or not, as well who is holding the Frisbee. We want to check both of those traits. The get velocity, what we're doing here is we're essentially getting how much force is applied on this Frisbee. I like to call it speed, but it's technically called force. And we're getting its force by getting its magnitude, because the way we get velocity is by magnitude. If we just try to wire up the velocity output, we wouldn't be able to check how fast it was going. By doing a vector get magnitude, we can see how fast it travels in float numbers. And the Rec Room object get its local player 40 is here so that we prevent a bunch of like bugs, because if we don't have this, the disk might be a bit like jittery, so might be the players. So by filtering the 40 to the local player, it will be less laggy and it will take up no net in this case. It will only act on CPU. This not here after the currently equipped is here because we want to check if we're currently not equipping it. And when we're not equipping it, that's when we want it to fly. We don't want it to start flying us when we're not currently holding it, because that doesn't make sense. That will go to an and so will the greater equal when we're checking for how fast the disk is traveling, as well as the 40 that we're checking if the local player is the 40. The local player being yourself. The player output of the Rec Room object get last equipping player and the Rec Room object get first with tag both get added to a get position. We do this because we want to get their positions, and then we have a subtract. The reason we are subtracting these two vectors is so that we can actually follow where it's going. And the reason we're subtracting the disk's position by the player's position is because imagine we have a Frisbee in front of us and we are behind the Frisbee. If we subtract the two positions, then we would take the coordinates of the disk and the coordinates of ourselves, and then we would get a coordinate that is somewhat in between us. And that is essentially the direction that we want to set later on velocity. And that is why we get sent forward in the direction of where we throw it, because we are subtracting the disk's position from my position. If we swapped these positions, however, then it would be subtracting my position by the disk's position. So if I was behind the disk and I was subtracting that by the disk position, then it would fly us backwards, and that's not what we want to happen. This and output will go to the if, and the if is being updated 30 times a second by a 30 Hertz. We're also checking if the player is local, essentially the Rec Room object. We're checking with the help of Rec Room object get last equipping player if that is the local player who is currently equipping it. If it is the local player, then it will set velocity at 30 Hertz to the player with the speed of 5, but again you can change this with the subtraction that we have done there. And that is the circuitry explained. Alright, so thank you so much for watching this tutorial. This was a really fun tutorial to do, and I hope that you learned something from this. That is always my goal with these tutorials. It's not only to get the rewards, it's also to learn and give you guys new skills that you can eventually use in the future to create even more awesome projects. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it and you want more of these tutorials, because I'll gladly make more. And we'll see you all in the next video. See ya!